Welcome back to Nomad PDU. Today is more of a technical talk, and it's about the BMS, about inverters, and about lending your unit to someone without instructions. So a BMS in a Nomad is battery management software, if you want to call it that. It is actually a unit that sits between the battery and then all your inputs. So basically what your BMS does is where all the smarts are, things like dead short protection, reverse parallel, overcharging protection, overdraw, those types of things there. So the inputs over here, as you can see, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plug a 240 charger in. I'm going to talk a bit about that in a minute. The 240 charger that comes with the Nomad is an ACDC charger. So it takes 240 from your house or from an inverter, which I'll show you in a minute, converts it into 12.6, and then you can plug it into the Nomad, into the regulated input. So over here is a regulated input, like so, and we get that plugged in. Okay, you can see the charge light on there. So the red Anderson is a regulated input. That's where you plug your ACDC charger into and another regulated source. So if you've got a regulated solar panel that has a controller, MPPT or something like that, it's got a regulator on it. Because it's regulated, you can put it into that input, maximum 25 amp, and away you go. So that will run through to the BMS and then to the battery. So on the input, it goes in, the BMS detects what it is and allows it through to the battery and says it's okay. The red and black poles here are where you connect your unregulated solar panel. So if you've got a solar panel with no regulator on it at all, up to 200 watt is typically okay. You can connect it direct to these poles. It'll go into an MPPT inside the Nomad and then goes to the same BMS and to the battery. So the BMS protects all of your inputs here and everything goes through that BMS. Now, if you've got the ACDC plugged in like so, you can see that it's charging. That tells me the BMS is completely fine, and if I was to plug my solar in regulated or unregulated, it's going to work. What I'll do now is I will take the same 240 and unplug it from the wall, and you can see that it's gone off, and then I'm going to plug it into an inverter. So an inverter, just so you know what an inverter does if you don't know, an inverter takes 12 volt and turns it into 240, so you can put your power plug like this, which goes into your house, and then you can plug it in, say, to your car, and then what it will do, it'll take that to the ACDC, it'll convert it, and then it'll be charging just as it would from the house. Now I wanted to make the statement very clear. The charger cannot determine whether the power is coming from an inverter or it's coming from the house. So if you were to say to us that it won't work from solar, so the red light won't come on, it won't charge, it won't regulate it or unregulated, it won't charge, and it won't charge by using the ACDC charger off an inverter, but you said it will charge from the house, it's actually not even possible, because the fact is that that BMS has shut down. And that's typically when someone's trying to overcharge it continually, BMS will shut down either permanently or it'll shut down temporarily. But what will happen is we'll get a call from a customer to explain what they did, and then we'll pretty much know whether it's a temporary or it's a complete shutdown. Once the BMS is shut down completely, there is no current able to get through under any circumstance. So there is no circumstance that you can say that, well, I had my ACDC plugged into the inverter and it wouldn't charge, and the solar panels wouldn't charge, and the regulated solar panel wouldn't charge, but when I plugged it to 240, it would now charge. It's just not possible because that BMS has shut down. I've got a unit here which will explain that a bit more clearly. So what I've got is I've got this plugged in at the moment, which you just saw charging. I'll just do that again. So that's the inverter to the ACDC and to charge. Now I've got a unit here that the customer was honest enough to tell me what he did, and he basically plugged in a 50 amp DC-DC charger, or he didn't, his friend did, and kept on hitting it, and then he's basically what he's done is killed the BMS, and that won't be able to be restarted. We know that, and I've tested the cells on the unit and they're fine because it's been protected, and he just left it and said, hey, my fault, you know, I did the wrong thing. So let's just have a look at this. Now this is plugged into the inverter that we just saw charging the other unit. Okay, so as you can see here, there's no load, which means it's not charging, but if I put it back on the other unit that we just had in there before, you can see it's gone over to 10 amp. So what happens, this BMS has now shut down, okay, on this unit. There is no way that I can take this now and take that out, and let's plug it into 240, which I've done now. You can see the charge light is on, so there's power going into this unit, but it's not charging. So you can do this any way you like. You can put a solar panel on there. You can do whatever you like, but that unit will not, under any circumstance, take a charge at all. No way. So it'll have to come back to us, and we'll have to replace that BMS. So we'd rather that happen because you've protected the most expensive part of the unit, and we'll just replace that BMS. If you tell us exactly what you did, there are ways that we can, in some instances, wake that up, depending on if it's a temporary shutdown or not. What you will find is if that happens, you'll get some people out there, even though it's clearly stated on here, output only. An output is an output. It's in green. It says do not charge. It's the same as you wouldn't stick a screwdriver into the power socket of your house because it's going to probably hurt you a little bit. But if you plug it into the output, a power source into that, we sometimes have to do it under a controlled environment. We put a bit of current in there because we have to do a diagnostic test on the battery and all those types of things there, but it's in a controlled engineering environment. But under no circumstances should you be charging it from an output. So somebody will give a unit to their friend will have a unit shut down like this, and then decide, well, there's another Anderson here, I'll just plug it in there. And what will happen is if they do plug it in, because I'll think, oh, that's okay, I'll plug it in, and I only do it just briefly, what they do is they'll plug it in, red light goes on. Now, I've only done that for a second. That's not something you'd ever do. Now, if you leave that plugged in for a couple of hours, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to create a volatility in the battery, and it's more than likely going to drop a series. That battery will be buggered. It's going to have to need replacing. You void your warranty, and you're going to have a battery that's not going to do anything for you. And that's the least of your worries, because you can actually do a lot more damage than that. So under no circumstance do you charge from an output. The same as you wouldn't try and charge a unit from the SIGA socket or go from an output to an output. It's common sense. But we are still getting people do it, and we know clearly that that's what they've done, because we just look at the BMS and we say, well, the BMS has shut down, so there's no way that unit could have been charging unless you charged it from the output. And if you got away with it, great, but you don't want to be leaving it in there at all. You don't ever want to do it unless you've been if you've been directed by someone from our company. But you do not ever charge. Common sense, you never charge from an output. And again, just about the chargers and about inverters, the statement being that the inverter only likes, a charger only likes power from 240 from a house is not correct. The charger can't determine where that power is coming from. So if it's not working from the inverter, as you saw before, there's no circumstance you can plug that into the wall and it will now work. Especially like a unit like that, you can do that 100,000 times, it's still not going to ever charge through the input. So that's just about what the BMS is there for. Now, if you follow the instructions as are clearly in the box, as it states on here, outputs, output, input, input. If you follow the instructions, then you're going to get a lot of years without any issue at all. But if you try and make your own rules up as to how you think things should work, and you don't follow the instructions, or you borrow it to a friend and you don't give them instructions, which we always suggest, if you're going to borrow these to your friends, that's fine. Use some common sense, but also go to our website, have a look at the tutorials, have a look at the instructions on V5, which are up at the top of the website, and follow the instructions. And if they follow the instructions, they won't ever have a problem. So that's what a BMS is for, the battery management software. It is a piece of like a unit, it's hard coded, it sits on top of the battery. It's there to protect yourself. So when we get calls from customers, it's really important that you be honest with us, tell us what you did. Like most of our customers, with thousands and thousands and thousands of these out there without issue, if you tell us what you've done, 99% of the time we can rectify an issue. But again, if you start making your own rules up to how you think they should work, then you're going to run into problems. You will void your warranty. You've got yourself a unit that's not going to be able to provide you any power when you're out in the camping. So, our best advice is look, follow the instructions and don't mess around with it. You're out in the bush. Do all your testing at home to make sure that the way you're going to run your campsite, your fridges and so on, are all within the confines of what it is in instructions, and then you won't have any problems. So again, that's the BMS on the Nomad PDU that protects it from things like overcharging, dead short, reverse parallel, and overdraw. That's all coded into the BMS, hard coded into them all. They're all the same. So you've got confidence that the BMS will protect the unit as long as you're doing the right thing by the unit and charging it always through the inputs. So the inputs, all of them, all go through that same BMS. There's no way that it can charge from one port, any of the inputs, and then not charge by the other ones. It totally shuts down the BMS. It's finished, and it will not take a charge. So that's a little bit about the BMS, and I'm sure we'll talk about it further soon. Thanks.